Heidi Cooper, everybody. Let's give it up for Heidi. Heidi, that was beautiful. That was Melissa Etheridge. I Need to Wake Up. Best known she released that album back in the day when An Inconvenient Truth, that movie by Gore, was released. And she wrote that song for that movie. So welcome, good morning. We are in our second week of our new month of our global vision. And that global vision is basically creating a world that works for all. And we dove headfirst into that last week, into the true meaning of that and how that shows up for us personally and individually in our own lives, and how that's really the most and greatest and only way to influence creating a world that works for all. So if you could go to that slide, please. Thank you. So that's our global vision. And I mentioned last week, and there's some folks that are here today that weren't here last week, so I want to touch on it just a little bit, and that is over 100 centers in the Centers for Spiritual Living movement are proclaiming and holding this vision for an entire year. And this is our vision for the month, and we're going to enter into consciousness and share that. And I talked a little bit about the power of when people come together to focus consciously on an idea, to hold something in mind and to take it into their lives and allow it to percolate and allow their conscious awareness to embrace it a little bit more. And it makes such a huge impact and influence on our world, not only our personal world, but our universal world, which is really the whole reason why we're stepping into this greater experience of holding this global vision collectively. And I'd mentioned the research projects that have been going on where people will hold an idea in mind and will pray like for a particular city or a particular area, and all kinds of things happen. You know, the crime rate goes way down. You know, we influence our world through our conscious awareness and how we choose to direct our energy. So that's the power of it. So right here, right now, except for the East Coast and those that are on a different time. So right here today, we're all coming together under this global vision. If you'll go to the next slide, we'll be speaking this vision together collectively as a community every week. And so here we go. Let's say it together. The global vision. We see a world that works for everyone, where all life is honored as expressions of the divine, where people live according to spiritual truth, where humanity awakens to spiritual magnificence, where humanity rediscovers personal creative power, where we live as one global family, where kinship with all life prospers, where unity and connection is emphasized, forgiveness is the norm, where spiritual guidance is valued, where we are called to conscious social action, where people have enough food, homes, and a sense of belonging, and where there is peace, harmony, and justice for all, where resources are valued, cared for, and shared, and where communities are meaningfully involved in service to the world, where there is a renewed emphasis on beauty, nature, creativity, art, and aesthetics. What do you all think about that vision? Woo! Pretty amazing, isn't it? It really is amazing. If we could go to the next slide, please. So this is one of my favorite things that I am holding in consciousness every single day. This is what I know to be true and what I am up here speaking about every single Sunday, is the world is waking up from a deep sleep into a new reality where love, compassion, and respect for all life take center stage. And I know I spoke a lot about that last Sunday, about how every single life is of the utmost in value, is priceless. And as we enter into a greater concept and awareness of this world where everyone is valued, that there isn't any particular life that is more important than another life, then we are able to enter into this conscious awareness where all judgment falls away, all need to size things up, to label it, to see it as with us or against us or any of that kind of way of looking at things and communicating and seeing life that is this idea of keeping us separate is dissolving, because we are entering into this greater awareness that we are truly all connected and that we're truly all one. So there's the quick summary from last week. So we're diving headfirst into on purpose. Now, I want to see by raise of hands how many of you have ever asked somebody, did you do that on purpose? You ever thought that? Did you do that on purpose? I mean, because there's something with that. There's like a little energy or a charge, because if we were to have found out that somebody did something on purpose, is that going to change how we reacted or responded? Sometimes. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. Not really, it's kind of up to the circumstance and the situation. But we're here this morning to talk about how absolutely everything is on purpose. The universe does everything on purpose. Everything in our life is set up and produced in such a way that it is constantly and always supporting what we are holding within our hearts and intentions as the truth of our being, and what we're holding in mind and in our hearts as possibly false beliefs about ourselves and the world. No matter what we're thinking about and what we believe is exactly what we're going to experience. So everything is done on purpose. Absolutely everything. Now, that's not exactly easy to swallow sometimes. And the whole idea in this morning is to have a true shift in conscious awareness regarding the things that we experience in our life. You see, I firmly believe that life is not meant to be effortless and easy and peaceful all the time. I know that we are meant to grow in conscious awareness, and in order to do that, we have to flex our spiritual muscle. But what I do believe is that we're not supposed to be so hard on ourselves all the time. And there's a difference. There's a difference to me. So that old adage that pain is inevitable, we will experience pain in our life, but suffering is what? Optional. Suffering is optional. And so in this collective idea of all the Centers for Spiritual Living coming together and kind of talking about a topic today, the topic today is about suffering. And to be able to wrap my soul and heart and mind around it in order to prepare a message for you this morning, I got to go within and experience what suffering means to me and what I think the role is and how important it is in our lives. You see, there is a difference between pain and there is a difference between suffering, and everything's done on purpose. So when we ask the question to the universe as we're going through our life, did you do that on purpose? The answer is yes, it is. And as we talked a little bit about last week, how we make a change in our life and create a world that works for all comes from the quality of the decisions and choices we make. And in order to have a decision and a choice that is of high quality, we have to be more awake. We have to be more aware. Now, I know that this might sound redundant. We talk about this a lot. It's kind of like the foundation of our teaching, right? Especially in our foundation class. But this morning, we're going to dive deep into what that means. And it's all about when we take in additional information, which I believe we do as we live our life. And if we live a life deep within on purpose of discovering more about ourselves, discovering more about the spiritual workings and the essence of who we are in relation to life itself, then we become more awake. Things occur, we are a part of it, we experience it, but how we choose to relate to it makes all the difference in the world, and that's where the quality of our choice comes into play. Now, can you go to the next slide, please? Okay, so this is the whole point, is human purpose is to connect with universal consciousness. And there's all different ways that we can take in experiences. Our perspectives are generally based on our beliefs about things, which we have complete and total control of, but the majority of it is happening subconsciously. We automatically respond and react to things based on beliefs that we've been holding on to that we may not even be aware of. I think we can all say yes to that, right? Are we all on board with kind of believing that? Well, perspective makes a big difference, and I like to always bring something funny to the talk that kind of proves a little bit of what my point is. And this is hilarious. She's laying on the table, kind of holding on with her fingers, and she says, I have to say, I had a different impression of what Reiki was all about. So the purpose of this slide is to point out that if there is something that you have an impression of, but you're having a different experience in life that isn't matching up with your impression, then that's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to get more information, to learn, to ask questions, to maybe open ourselves up and expand our awareness, to be more receptive, to get out of a particular groove of thinking or way of living life that allows us the expansion, that allows us to continue to create a world that works for all. So do you see how that kind of comes together? And we're gonna talk about some examples today that's really gonna pull that together. Can we go to the next slide, please? So I talked last week a lot about responsibility. When we hold a vision in place, a vision is not about the doing. A vision is about holding something within our heart and soul and then being consciously aware of how we impact our lives, our personal, unique little bubble of life that influences and impacts that vision, and then it creates something on a greater scale. But there's something about accepting responsibility that helps and aids us in making a higher quality of choice in our life. So this slide says, by accepting responsibility, we take effective steps toward our goal, an inclusive human society on a habitable planet, a society that works for all humans and for all non-humans. By accepting responsibility, we move closer to creating a world that works for all. So that's super important. Now, I don't want to just kind of let us hang out in this area, though, because there's so much more to this. I was so excited that this was the theme for this morning. I've been given this talk probably 100 times in my mind all week long, and it keeps adapting and it keeps changing up, and things come up, and I've just been so excited. I've been so excited and overly ecstatic about this message today. And this morning I got up at 5:30 and was raring to go, and right about the time Tony left, something happened. You know how it is when you step into this experience of what you're talking about? I got violently ill. Really incredible pain, was very ill for quite some time, because I think some of you might have noticed I got here, a little later than I usually get here, and that's why. And I thought, what the heck is this all about? Because that's the whole point about being awake and aware, and then asking what is coming up in conscious awareness for me to understand. And I'm not going to tell you that I've got it figured out, because I really don't. I haven't gone into prayer and meditation. I haven't listened to the message of what this is about. But what I can tell you is, yeah, I'm in pain. I had some severe pain. There's something that happens when we are being pushed to that limit, to that boundary. And that's what I want to talk to you about this morning. You see, we are unlimited, especially when we realize that we're in partnership with the divine, with the universe. We are unlimited. And our ability to go beyond that which may be in front of us to experience and take in the moment is unlimited as well. We have unlimited potential in absolutely everything. And so it reminds me of these two movies. One that's out right now, and I don't know if the other one's out yet or not, Eddie the Eagle and Joy. How many of you have seen Joy yet? Okay, and how many of you are familiar with the story of Eddie the Eagle, the gentleman that had the dream in his heart to go to the Olympics? Okay, so both of these movies have a whole lot in common. Now, I saw Joy too, and I'm not going to give you any, what do they call that when you... Spoilers. I won't give you any spoilers, but I will weave it into my point because it is so amazing. So, and what's so cool is both of these movies are based on a true story. And how wonderful is it that we have movies now coming out for the whole public to go see that is talking, the whole premise is about becoming awake and becoming aware of what it is that you want to hold as true in your heart, as your goal and your dream and your desire and your intention, regardless of anything that's going on in your life, regardless of any obstacle, any mountain that looks like you have to climb. Because in the movie Joy, the woman that it's about, oh, let me tell you, take a deep breath. That woman, she had to go through so many different obstacles. And the interesting thing about it is they did a really good job in the movie of portraying that in a way that you felt it. They took you right to the edge, to the point of going, I don't know if I can take this anymore. I don't know how she can take it anymore. But there's something amazing. There's magic in that equation. You see, the magic of her knowing that there was something more to her life, that she became aware and awake that she was not bound by her experience. And when she was a little girl, her dog had become mangled and tied up with his leash in such a way that she invented a collar, this beautiful invention of a collar. And years later, somebody had invented the same thing. And she realized that, and she was like, oh my God, I invented that. That could have been me. But her family didn't go to college. They didn't know anything about patents. They didn't know anything about inventions. And so she didn't pursue it at all. But that creative impulse was within her, which really is what led and guided her to her awakening. And that's what suffering to me is all about. It's on purpose, you see. Even our suffering is on purpose. It's like a butterfly. You can't help a butterfly out of its cocoon. It won't live if you do that, because the whole nature of its breaking through its cocoon, it's creating and building the muscles that it needs to live the life of a butterfly. So that's what suffering in life is to me, and that's what it means, is we create this muscle that allows us to build and grow and become our dreams. And so if you constantly think about the top of the mountain, and you're climbing to the top of the mountain, and I know that you guys know what I'm talking about, where you have those moments of just being there. You are on top, and you've got it all figured out, and you've got all this enlightenment, and you're like, yeah, this is it. I'm plugged in. This is what life's about. You guys been there? Yeah. Right? Did you stay there long? Right. So my thinking on that is this. We get to go around the mountain and take that journey and walk that walk, because in doing that, that creates the consciousness that allows us to be on top of the mountain. And when we get to the top of the mountain, we have become that which we have held in vision and have known from the deepest parts of ourselves, and we have become that, to the point that then the top of the mountain becomes the bottom of the mountain again, because it's a constant experience. But when we go to the top of the mountain and we wish to stay at the top of the mountain, that's a little bit of a folly, I'm telling you, because we get to experience that which we create in our life. We get to do it on purpose, so that when we get to the top of the mountain, we've become that which allows us the consciousness to truly understand it and take it in and be one with it. It's pretty cool how that works. So Eddie the Eagle, this guy, wait till you check this movie out. And if you don't know anything about the storyline, I welcome you to find out about it. This guy, he wasn't a little boy. He was grown, and he has this dream to go to the Olympics. He didn't even know what he was going to do. He didn't even pick out what he was going to do. He just knew he was going to the Olympics. Right? Yeah, that's kind of funny, isn't it? But he got to, through his dream and through working and his desire and checking things out, he decided he was going to be a ski jumper. And so he started the training on that without ever having any former experience or knowledge of it. And this man held this dream alive within his heart, regardless of all of the many, many obstacles, literally and figuratively, that he had to go through to eventually get him to the Olympics. So much so, and it was the same. I mean, Joy and Eddie the Eagle, those movies, very similar in their storyline. But even so, he did everything he needed to do. He mastered, so to speak, the art of ski jumping to the point that he could qualify for the Olympics. He qualifies for the Olympics, but then the Olympic people get together and change the rules so that he can't be in. I mean, he was almost at the top of the mountain, and he had to go through another one of those obstacles, right? So how many times have you had that experience in your life where you're working towards something? Or even if the something you're working towards is just peace in the home, or peace in the workplace, or peace within you, and you're working towards it, and you feel it, and you got it on a fleeting way, and it comes and goes, and then this obstacle comes up that you just didn't see coming, and it takes you off of it. Well, it really doesn't. The purpose of the talk is about being on purpose. Everything is on purpose. Everything. So why is that so important for us to know? You're like, okay, great. So now you're telling me that everything that I'm experiencing in my life is on purpose. Then why is that so important? It's important because it's all about how we experience adversity, how we see it, how we experience it showing up in our lives, how we label it, how we choose to judge it. If we truly hold a vision to create a world that works for all, then a part of that is becoming more awake and more aware in our own lives. And when we enter into those obstacles that make us stronger and that give us what we need in order to achieve our goals and our dreams, that we don't suffer the suffering for so long, that we don't push against it, that we don't see it as an enemy, that we don't see it as an adversary, that we can truly come across it and be like, oh, I get what this is all about. I know why this is here. Embrace it, look it square in the eye, go within and discover that which within yourself you need to be more aware of. You need to understand at a greater level so that that particular type of suffering doesn't come into your life anymore. And if it does, and when it does, then you're coming at it in a different consciousness. You're approaching it in a different way. Arthur Chang says it this way: as a child outgrows their childhood clothes, so does the magic of purpose let us outgrow our childish ways. Purpose grows us into mature self-acceptance, magnetic attractiveness, penetrating insights to dream the improbable, and surprising courage to achieve the impossible. You see, that's what Joy did in the movie. She did all of that. She knew deep down that she was an incredible inventor and that her inventions, they were good, and that the public would be able to use them, and that the public's life would be made easier because of her invention. Yet she met obstacle after obstacle after obstacle, but in the movie it shows that as she met the obstacles, that part within her that believed in her dream and believed in herself was allowed to come through, so much to the point that she changed the way she viewed things. She changed the way she reacted and responded to things that were showing up in her life as her obstacles. So as soon as she made that shift, she took control of her life in a greater way. And the world outside of herself started responding to her in that way. So it's this subtle shift that you could see the moment it took place for her. And she changed. She shifted. And that was like the first obstacle. There were lots more after that. But just think, it's that laying of foundation every single time, folks, you step up and believe in yourself to the extent that you're able to make a shift, to make a little bit of a change, going more towards that which you hold in your soul as to be the truth for you, regardless of external circumstance, regardless of what's coming up for you. And then the beauty in it is getting to the point where you can feel gratitude for that which is coming up for you. feeling gratitude for that obstacle is the best way to glean all of the riches and the diamond from it and let it dissolve, so that you don't find yourself hanging out in that scenario for a really long time. If it doesn't feel good, if you're in pain and it feels like suffering, awaken. Allow that shift. And it starts from having confidence within yourself, being united, knowing the truth, allowing that to be. So Eddie the Eagle and Joy, they took it to the edge where that creative impulse takes off and takes place. And I watched this amazing nature animal discovery show. We love watching that kind of stuff. I just love finding out all about animals and the planet. And to me, that's a part of the vision, creating a world that works for all. And you know what's happening? It's happening in the animal world as well. They were showing several instances where different animals and different species were adapting, but not adapting based on instinct. There was something else being employed. For example, there were these cheetahs that all the time that they'd ever been researched, they operated in tribes, and the male was like the dominant cheetah and didn't allow any other males to be a part of the tribe. And now, because of how the world, the global environment is changing, they usually dined on small animals, and the small animals are not available anymore because of climate change, only the bigger animals. The cheetahs were too small. They can't possibly take down a big animal by themselves. So now they've changed how they do things. They now stick together as a bigger family. The brothers hunt together. They've adapted to hunting big animals in the way that they're working together, where 3 or 4 brothers will hunt all at once. And they take down the bigger animal that's enough to feed the bigger family. It's like last week when I was talking about the depiction the artist did of hell with the big pot of soup, and everyone around it was wasting away and they were starving because they all had really long-handled spoons. They couldn't feed themselves, but they could feed each other. So that, to me, is how we step into this greater understanding of holding a vision of a world that works for all, is we step out of whatever mold we are operating in the moment and being willing with an earnest heart to be open and receptive through our mind and our soul and our spirit to open ourselves up to having a different experience, like the cheetahs. There were so many more. There were these monkeys that now their really only food source was this, I don't know, this like thing like a coconut that was encased in this really hard shell. And they created tools. They even made these areas where they were able to take these hard-shelled nuts, and they used just the right type of stone to crack open the nut. And it filmed and showed these monkeys from the time they were born, how they adapted to that and how they worked on that. It was really quite amazing. There were lots of them that they showed. So that reminds me of us. It reminds me of us as a society and as a global whole in humanitarianism. You know, have we come to the point where we are truly starving because we can't feed ourselves and we haven't yet figured out that it's about feeding each other? Or are we to the point where it is about feeding each other and we're all getting on board with that? Which do you think it is? First one or second? I think it's the second one. Definitely the second one. Especially all of you guys in this room, right? There's something magical that is happening right now. And I'm not kidding. I'm not just telling you this because I'm up here and I'm here to tell you something inspirational. I really mean it. I see it. I see it in daily life. I see it in my life. I see it globally. There is something happening, folks. It's like that shift that happened for Joy in the movie, that first subtle shift. There's a shift taking place. And we are being called to be open and awake and aware, and to embrace this experience of suffering that shows up in our life with an idea of appreciation. Because once we take it in and know that it is on purpose, that it is for us, it's not against us, then we don't push at it anymore. We don't resist it, and it doesn't keep showing up in varying different degrees and colors and ways in our life. You know, there's a great example here of a story by one of my beloved mentors in this movement. His name is Edward B. Huhn, Dr. Edward B. Huhn. Would love for you to get a chance to meet this beautiful, beautiful soul, because he is just a wonderful being. And he shared his soul. I love how he's willing to be vulnerable so that we can all gain from this experience. But he told a little story to best describe what it is that we're talking about today, and I want to share it with you. He says, our Christmas Eve candlelighting service was extraordinary. The stage was beautifully decorated with very expensive candles. $60 each, these candles line the front of the stage in spectacular beauty. And after the service, we noticed that someone had stolen one of them. It's a bummer, isn't it? It's a bummer. He said it was a bummer. He says, can you believe that? It was so disappointing. And later I told all my friends about it, and we shared similar stories of being robbed and ripped off, and the feelings of violation just went on and on. And then next business day at the center, I told our staff about it, and then we shared our disappointment again. We talked it through, and we got used to the idea that in this world things like that happen, so we planned our strategy against ever letting a thing like that happen again. He says the problem, I say it's an opportunity, but he says the problem is the candle was never stolen. It had fallen down and rolled between the musical equipment and could not be seen. Yes. It just happened to have been stolen until it was found. Funny how that works, right? Have we ever been in that scenario where we just are so sure that somebody's being a certain way or something's being a certain way, and it ends up not being that way at all, right? But wait till we get to the meat of this, okay? He says, it was kind of embarrassing how quickly my mind went to terribilizing this and thinking the worst. I recognize that that is a tendency, and it's a pattern of believing in a world that doesn't work. So do you get the beauty of this? He is actually one of the 5 ministers that made up the global vision for this year, right? And then he's noticing, oh my God, I automatically went to a habitual way of seeing things and operating that is feeding a world that doesn't work for everybody, not the opposite. And so he says, I recognize that that is a pattern that is coming up, and that that pattern has been accepted and believed in for so long that it is the first go-to for many to use on how the world works, to explain how the world works. So do you get where he's going there and where I'm going? What is our tendency? Because everything's on purpose, and we get to guide that to the extent of the quality of our choices. And the quality of choice that I'm talking about here is this. And I am happy to report that there have been times where we've thought things have been taken here in our center, things that are unique and things that we wanted. And, you know, and people have come to me and told me, and my response is, well, I guess it's time for something different. You know, that's what it means to me. It's time for something different. It's time for a different experience. So where in our lives do we have that pattern and tendency to habitually terribilize something? And if we're doing that, are we being on purpose with holding a vision that works for all, that starts with our own life? So I'm inviting us to do that, to pay attention to it. Our Beyond Limits class wanted to do a movie night, which we did last Wednesday, where we watched What the Bleep, because in the class there were a couple of places where it was referenced. And I loved watching this movie with the class. I have it. I've had it since it came out, so I've had it for many years. So I hadn't watched it in a while. And my favorite scene in the whole movie is the wedding scene, where they're talking about how when we respond to things, that addiction is an emotional charge, that we have addictions within our body. It's a chemical process. And we are addicted to certain emotions because our body is really just this huge chemical creating factory. And if we are used to behaving a certain way, used to seeing something in a certain way, we have created and adapted our receptor sites on our cells to only be receivers of a particular type of chemical. and that chemical is created on body based on emotion. So the wedding scene showed like the people who were used to not believing in themselves and getting down on themselves, really low self-esteem. So somebody would look at them, kind of act like they wanted to come over and dance with them, and they automatically had these little cells that were like, oh, you're not good enough for them. What are you thinking? And get on back over to the corner, where you belong. That kind of talk. You guys familiar with that kind of talk? Or there's other kind of talk too, where the chemicals, the thoughts that we think that create the emotions in our body, that create the chemicals. So all of this is going on, folks, without us even being aware. What if we were aware? What if? That's an incredible question. I was working with somebody the other day, and we were talking about this idea of chaos in their workspace. And knowing that they wanted to finish this project or clean this up, but they don't. And then we got to the bottom of the fact that there was this need for constant low voltage anxiety. And that having the workplace messy or not finishing this particular project or whatever kept that low voltage anxiety. Didn't have a clue that that was going on in their life until we got to the bottom of it. But could you imagine that would produce that experience quite well, wouldn't it? Having your area messy or not being able to complete projects, always thinking, well, I need to get that done, or I need to do that, or I need to do that. That's low level voltage anxiety. So that's feeding that chemical need in the receptor site that was shown in the movie. So if you're thinking right now, why is that so important that you're up here talking about it? It's truly, folks, if we truly want to create a world that works for all, then we are being invited in this moment to enter into a time where we are so fully aware, that we are so fully living our life on purpose in every element, in every way. And I know we hear this, and I know we go to class and practice it, and we learn all about it. Yet then, life happens, and things come in front of us, and accidents happen, or loved ones have an experience. But folks, it's all about our tendency to view it in a certain way. So what if we were to truly take out all idea of suffering, all? And if I feel pain, I immediately go to, wow, what is in this for me? Where's the gift in this for me? And I bet you will gain clarity on what that is. I always have. And as soon as I gain that clarity, or even before, there's no need to know exactly, but move into appreciation, where you can at least 1% feel grateful for whatever is before you, because you know that it's being done on purpose for your life. You called it in partnership with the infinite intelligence that always says yes, and by calling it in and having it in front of our face and being aware of it, that's the magic. That's where the magic happens. Just like with Edward, the candle was never stolen. And he goes on to say, now I'm not saying that candles never get stolen. They do. I mention it because it illustrates how patterns can set in and a person can believe something that may not be true as long as it fits the expected pattern. Have you been there before? Yeah. He goes on to say, that's why I love this teaching. It teaches me to practice new patterns. I want to practice expecting the world to stand hand in hand. I don't care that I don't know how it will come to pass. I want to break my bad habits of terribilizing and then spreading the terror. Right? Amen. Amen. So I want to close today by sharing with you, first I want to share with you the Rumiism, because I promised Rumi I would not forget his Rumiisms. I have a ton of slides, but like I said, so here's the Rumiism for today. The prophets accept all agony and trust it, for the water has never feared the fire. The prophets accept all agony. So folks, when we resist something and push against it and see it as not being in partnership with ourselves, what generally happens? We feed it energy. What we resist persists. It continues to show up in our life. What if we were to accept that which is occurring in our life right now as being on purpose and treating it like the greatest partner in the world that we can be so grateful for? We discovered something very interesting about Rumi yesterday. We had our walkthrough with our landlord to sign and renew our new lease. And it was the first time Rumi met Wendy, we thought. He acted like he knew her. They had kind of a special connection. So we go through our meeting, we have a wonderful time, she's a delightful soul, and we get ready, she's getting ready to leave, and Rumi's sitting on the steps like he does. And I asked her, I said, have you ever seen a breed like this, a Finnish Spitz? And she's looking at him and she's like, I know that dog. Now, I know some of you knew that when we adopted Rumi, we found out he was from our community. Well, come to find out, his owner rented from Wendy's management company. It's like another piece to the puzzle. So she went on to say that his owner had, and we knew he had gotten sick. It was some kind of medical condition, but Rumi had been mistreated, but not on purpose. I mean, we knew that the owner had gotten sick. He had gotten sick with brain cancer. And what had happened is, he was an older gentleman, got sick with brain cancer, had to go off for treatments, and nobody knew that the dog was in the condo, that he had a dog. So that's why Rumi was skin and bones when we adopted him, and was very malnourished and had lost most of his teeth. You know, he'd been living in this room all by himself, and, you know, imagine that, doing that for months, what that would do to you. But what was so interesting is from the moment that we adopted Rumi and brought him home, he acted like he was at home. He acted like he knew the place. So, you know, we're just like going, we're so grateful, this is wonderful. I asked her yesterday, I said, the renter, his old owner, did they live in a place just like this? Because there's like at least 8 different floor plans. She says, yes, it was exactly like your place. Even with the same exposure, it wasn't mirror image, it was exactly like your place. Well, no wonder he acted like he was at home. But think of the consciousness of this dog, right? That's what I want to point out, is think of the consciousness of this dog. He knew that there was a better way of living. He knew that, okay, I want my home, but I want to be fed, I want to be walked, and I want to be loved. So he just picked himself up and got moved just 2 streets down in the very same house. I'm like, dang, that's amazing. But that's just another example of how that works. I think that's pretty amazing. So have you heard the story about the social worker who got held up at knife point? So the whole premise of this talk, I'm going to bring it home for you right now. This social worker had been working all day long, and he commuted via train. He got off the train and he started walking to his next destination, and this teenager held him up by knife point and wanted money. So the social worker got his wallet out and handed him his wallet. And the teenager started walking away, and he said, wait a minute. The teenager turned around and he said, are you done for the night, or are you going to keep doing this for a few hours longer, because it's really, really cold, and I want you to have my coat as well. And the teenager was like, dude, why would you do that? And he said, because I'm concerned that you're going to get cold, and I don't want that to happen. And he said, and I was just walking to go get something to eat. I was going to this diner. Would you like to go with me? Have you eaten? Would you like somebody to eat with? And so the teenager starts walking next to the social worker, and they go to the diner, and they have a meal, and they talk. They have a conversation, and the teenager's like, why would you offer me your coat? I just held you up and took your money. And so the social worker was kind of telling him about it. He's like, I get it. If you need my money so bad that you robbed me by gunpoint, you must be in need. And so when it came time to pay the bill, the social worker said, well, you're going to have to get this because you've got my wallet. And so the teenager gets his wallet out and he hands it back to him. And he pays for dinner. And he says, well, I'll pay for dinner if you'll give me something in return. And so the teenager gave him his knife. That is creating a world that works for all, folks. You see, there's a certain way that I think we're taught to respond when we're held up at knife point by a teenager that's mugging us for a wallet. But he chose to respond in a different way, didn't he? He chose to not terribilize the situation. He chose to operate based on who he was. I think that's pretty amazing. That's the impact that I desire to have in working on this global vision, creating a world that works for all. What about you guys? So, things happen. Things happen on purpose for us, never against us. And we get to open up. I know it sounds crazy, folks, and if I haven't done it myself, I wouldn't ask you to do it. But we get to shift our perspective. We get to not terribilize the things that come up in our life anymore. We get to look at it and consider it a partner in our life and gain all of the diamonds and the riches and the gifts that come from it and move into gratitude and then show up for somebody else that just might need to give their knife to us. So let's seal the deal with prayer. Let's go in and know. Truly go in and know that we are in constant and consistent partnership with the divine, with the utmost high, with that has created absolutely everything seen and unseen. That universal source and substance is within you. And you are in partnership with all that has created anything and everything all the time. So your life is on purpose. My life is on purpose. And I know that I have the clarity and the strength and the support to become more awake so that I can make higher quality decisions about my life, about what we think about, and about how we choose to react, respond, and behave. And I'm going to do that grounded in love. Grounded in so much love and compassion and understanding from the 30,000-foot level. I'm going to realize that if something or someone's coming at me for some reason, it's most likely because they're feeling disconnected, feeling separated. And so this is a call to love. It's a call to be on purpose with our global vision and our personal vision in every aspect of our life. And I am so grateful. I allow this awakening to continue to flow through my life, and so it is.